Hello, this chapter is about seed plants. Our discussion of plants in chapter 29 focused on bryophytes, the non-vascular plants, and on seedless vascular plants like ferns, all of which reproduce by means of spores, which are haploid reproductive cells that give rise to gametophytes. Many successful plants reproduce and disperse by means of seeds. Seeds change the course of plant evolution, enabling their bearers to become the dominant producers in most terrestrial ecosystems. Seed plants originated about 360 million years ago. A seed consists of an embryo and nutrients surrounded by a protective coat. Seeds can disperse over long distances by wind or other means, like animals, human, water. Seeds can live for extended periods at reduced rates of metabolism, dormant, germinating when conditions become favorable. Living seed plants can be divided into two clades, gymnosperms and angiosperms, the flowering plants. Seed plants affect almost every aspect of our lives. For example, humans collect and use seeds for food. The food stored in seeds is a concentrated source of carbohydrates, proteins, oils, and vitamins, which are nourishing for humans, for animals, as well as for germinating seeds themselves. Dry seeds can be stored for times of need. Humans collect seeds during times of plenty and save them for times of need. Most seeds that humans consume are produced by angiosperms, such as beans, peas, chickpeas, wheat, rice, maize, barley, etc. Seeds of certain gymnosperms, like pine, are edible, usually sold as pine nuts. Other edible products including tea, coffee, chocolate, and spices. Plants provide fuel, building materials, clothing, paper, resin. Biofuels, derived from living biomass, can be produced by rapidly growing crops such as switchgrass and poplar. Biofuels would reduce the net emission of carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas. Plants also improve environmental quality, absorbing CO2 and releasing of oxygen during photosynthesis. Because of their attractive appearance, plants are grown for landscape design and decorative holiday trees. Plants provide food and shelter to animals. Plants' roots prevent soil erosion. Some secondary compounds of seed plants are used in medicine. Example on plant-derived medicines shown in table 30.1. Atropine is used as eye pupil dilator during eye examination. Digitalin is a heart medication. Menthol is a throat soother. Ingredients also an ingredient in a cough medicines. Morphine painkiller or reliever. Quinine, malaria preventive. Taxol, ovarian cancer drug. Tuberculin, muscle relaxant. Vinblastine, leukemia drug, etc. On this chapter, we will study the general features of seed plants, examining terrestrial adaptations that seed plants added to those already present in bryophytes, the non-vascular plants, and seedless vascular plants. Briefly naming the phyla of gymnosperms, tracing the steps of the life cycle of one of the gymnosperms, the pine. Study the reproductive adaptations of angiosperms. Study a generalized life cycle of angiosperms, exploring angiosperm diversity, and compare and contrast between monocots and eudicots. Seeds and pollen grains are key adaptations for life on land. This is the first section. In addition to seeds, seed plants have adaptations for life on land, including the following: reduced gametophytes, heterospory, ovules, pollen. These adaptations help seed plants cope with conditions such as drought, الجفاف, and exposure to ultraviolet radiation and sunlight. They also freed seed plants from requiring water for fertilization. The following figure provides an overview of the gametophyte-sporophyte relationships in different plant groups, like non-vascular plants, the bryophytes, seedless vascular plants, and vascular plants, with the two divisions, gymnosperms and angiosperms. Plant life cycles alternate between two generations of distinct multicellular organisms: the haploid multicellular gametophyte, gamete-producing phase, and a diploid multicellular sporophyte, spore-producing phase. Each generation gives rise to the other, a process called, as you know, the alternation of generations. In non-vascular plants, the gametophyte is the dominant phase. The gametophyte is the dominant phase in the life cycle. Notice this, the gametophyte, haploid gametophyte. The plant you see is the gametophyte, while the sporophyte is short-lived and carried on the gametophyte and depend on the gametophyte for nutrition. In the case of vascular plants, we have two groups. The first group, the seedless vascular plants, like ferns. The gametophyte generation is reduced, independent, photosynthetic, and free-living, as you see here. The dominant phase is the sporophyte, diploid sporophyte. Yes. In seed plants, which we have two clades, gymnosperms and angiosperms, the gametophyte reduced, in fact microscopic, and develop within the walls of spores that are retained within the tissue of the parent sporophyte. This is the tissue of the parent sporophyte. Female gametophytes are found here inside this ovulate cone, megastrobilus, and the microscopic male gametophytes are found inside this pudding cone or microstrobilus, and both are carried on the sporophyte and dependent on sporophyte for nutrition. In angiosperms, the gametophyte also reduced and microscopic and depend on sporophyte tissue for nutrition. Microscopic female gametophytes, haploid ones, are found inside the ovules here, while the macroscopic male gametophytes are found inside these parts of the flower, the anther, and both are carried on sporophyte. So, to summarize, the gametophytes of seed plants are microscopic. They develop within the walls of spores that are retained within tissues of the parent sporophyte. This arrangement protects the developing gametophyte from environmental stress and enables it to obtain nutrients from the sporophyte. The other adaptation, heterospory, which is the rule among seed plants. You know that vascular plants could be homosporous or heterosporous. Homosporous plants produce one kind of spore, which usually produces a bisexual gametophyte, like in fern. Homosporous spore production is in the sporangium found in sporophyll. Inside this sporangium, we have the sporocyte cell. This sporocyte will divide by meiosis and give rise to a single type of spore, haploid spores. Spore will typically germinate into a bisexual gametophyte containing the gametangia, female gametangia carrying the egg, and male gametangia carrying shedding the sperm. Most seedless vascular plants, like ferns as we have mentioned, are homosporous. Heterosporous plants produce two types of spores, microspores and megaspores, which develop into either male gametophyte or female gametophyte. Megasporangium on megasporophylls. Inside this megasporangium, we have megasporocytes, diploid cells, or megaspore mother cells that divide by meiosis and give rise to megaspore. This megaspore will divide by mitosis and give the female gametophyte. The female gametophyte will give rise to the egg. And microsporangium, inside this microsporangium carried on microsporophyll, we have microspore mother cell or microsporocytes. These microsporocytes undergo meiosis, giving microspores. Microspores give the male gametophyte. Male gametophyte give the male gamete, which is the sperm. Therefore, heterosporous is the rule among seed plants, and we have also few seedless vascular plants that are heterosporous. Therefore, megasporangia develop on modified leaves called megasporophylls. Megasporangia produce megaspores that give rise to female gametophytes. Microsporangia develop on microsporophylls. Microsporangia produce microspores that give rise to male gametophytes. Now we're going to talk about the fate of ovules. When these ovules give rise to egg and then fertilization, we end up with seed. Therefore, the seed is a fertilized ovule. Seed plants are unique in retaining the megasporangium within the parent sporophyte. An ovule consists of megasporangium, megaspore, and one or more protective integuments. Gymnosperm megasporangia, as the one shown here, have one integument. Angiosperm megasporangia usually have two integuments, not shown here. The micropyle, the only opening through the integument, allows entry of a pollen grain. A megaspore develops into female gametophyte, which produces the female gamete, the egg. The pollen grain, which had entered the micropyle, contains a male gametophyte, which develops a pollen tube that discharges sperm, thereby fertilizing the egg. Fertilization initiates the transformation of the ovule into seed, which consists of sporophyte embryo, food supply derived from female gametophyte, and a protective seed coat derived from integuments. The megasporangium dries out and collapses. Pollen and production of sperm. A microspore develops into a pollen grain that consists of male gametophyte enclosed within the pollen wall. Pollination is the transfer of pollen to the part of a seed plant containing the ovules. A germinated pollen grain produces a pollen tube that discharges sperm into the female gametophyte within the ovule. Pollen eliminates the need for a film of water and can be dispersed great distances by air or animals. If a sperm fertilizes the egg of a seed plant, the ovule will develop into a seed. A seed is a sporophyte embryo along with its food supply packaged in a protective coat. The seed is a vehicle for dispersing the embryo to distant sites. Seeds provide some evolutionary advantages over spores. They may remain dormant for days to years until conditions are favorable for germination, while most spores have shorter lifetimes. Seeds have a supply of stored food, unlike spores. Spores are single-celled. Seeds may be transported long distances by wind animals or humans. Again, this is not a great difference between these two, seeds and spores. Seeds are multicellular that afford maximum protection to the embryo, which is the future plant, at its most vulnerable stage of development, while spores are usually single-celled. The next figure summarizes the 5 derived traits of seed plants: reduced gametophytes, heterospory, ovules, pollen, and seeds.